please. Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are reviewing some Wolfram language functionality. This is getting in just under the wire before I go off and do my extreme professoring activity for the year with our various summer programs. Probably the last design review before that all kicks off on Monday. There'll be a bunch of live streams related to that for people who are interested. Okay, our agenda here is to look at the functions DateSetter and TimeSetter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, let's see what these look like. And do we have a cloud story for this? And do we have cloud people here?
I don't know if we have cloud people or not, but this is, we have some months until, this would go into a release. So we have time to, to work out the cloud story.
Okay. All right, here goes DateSetter. Oops.
So sorry, right now these all live in a special context. So if you want to append, it's the context is called date and time. You can see it in the first example. So if you want to append to date and time to your dollar context path.
Okay. Okay. So let's remind ourselves, what are some other setter things? Okay, so let's say color setter. Okay, so there's that. It then pops up, it then selects something, and then becomes the thing it is, so to speak.
Yeah.
So oh no, that's wrong, isn't it?
What's wrong with it? Looks
oh,
fine
I
to
see
me.
it. I have to say setting of that. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. Also fine. So then this is a rather boring setter.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Why is the year not selectable? I mean, I don't understand why that's any less. I mean, why not have that be a chugger as well? I mean, since most likely you're not going very many years away.
Yeah, well, I think that's a reasonable question, which I hadn't thought of. I guess the main thing is, just picking sort of a default range of years, which, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's got to, okay, how do I make an actual calendar?
Choose, this is something that is still a bit of a work in progress. Right now, you can just say appearance arrow calendar, but the thing that comes up doesn't have a month or year selector. And this is something that I asked Kevin to fix, but the fix didn't make it in time for, oh wait, there it is.
Okay, graphic design. Do we have somebody from graphic design here?
Yes. Hi, it's Billy.
Okay, this looks terrible so far.
Yeah, Billy has not seen this, so.
Okay.
So he gets no blame for its present appearance.
Right. I mean, just to give a sense here. So in this, why aren't these just arrowy things? So these are a picker, but this approach here, I see. So this is a forward backward.
Yeah.
And this is a picker of any date. And that's just a type in.
Yes. With also a forward and backward.
I mean, I strongly think this should be the default. This calendar appearance.
Possibly. I'm like to hear if the time and date people here have any strong opinions about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a trade-off of whether we want it to look more like a date object, which is what the current default is, or if we want it to look more like a sort of scheduler that you're used to seeing in your calendar app or what have you. I think probably from a usability perspective, it makes sense to go a little more calendar focused since that's the interface people are used to. But there is also a decent case to say if we want it to be basically a adjustable data object, that the current behavior is most closely aligned with the typesetting of data object.
Mhm.
I think both are useful. For example, if you have to introduce your birthday, the calendar is not that useful. But if you are worrying about nearby days, then it's more useful.
Sorry, wait a minute. What were you just saying?
I'm saying that both have their applications. For example, if you have to introduce your birth date, typically you are offered the menu style, not the calendar style, because you don't want to have to click again and again until you reach
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, what are all these options and things here?
So
What's that?
yeah, we'll fix it. So yeah, you can minimize the window for now.
Okay.
Okay, so Kevin or someone want to walk through some of the input forms that we have?
Sure. So in terms of just the number of arguments, this is designed as a control, but there is the non-dynamic form, which you can put in anything that date object understands as an appropriate date format. That's what the first set of scope examples is showing. It's fully hooked into the new locale stuff. So you can set the locale inside the date format. And this is all based around what date object typesets as. So that's what most of the documentation shows.
Right, this is cool. Graphic design wise, this needs some work. I mean, you know, this, for example, it's I think our beginning is okay.
Well, certainly the the field should be, the field heights should be evened up between the different controls, if there is even a different control. But yeah, so I agree with that.
Okay. So, and I'm kind of wondering, graphic design wise, should we have some separator line here or something? But it can't be a full separator because the whole thing is our beginning, whatever. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm just it's getting hard to read at this point. Now, if I go here, if I say calendar type arrow, let's say Jewish, what am I going to get here? Oh my gosh.
You didn't think that was going to work, did you?
Well, why doesn't it say our beginning here?
Because actually, when you switch to a different calendar type, it's changing the date format sort of under the hood. So now this is doing at not just the day granularity, it's now also shifted the date format, which affects the appearance to have the time included as well.
I'm sorry, that didn't answer my question. This has granularity. The default granularity is...
The default is day. The first few scope examples in the documentation are our granularity.
I know, but so is this. So, this is what this is. It's an hour granularity.
This may be an issue in date object itself. If you change this input to date object, what does it do? So just date object of the same string and option. Right. So it's probably coming from there.
Okay.
So that's
so it's a bug.
Exactly. It's something for us, not. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay.
And this is, I mean, obviously a lot of the design principles here are to hew as closely to date object and not reinvent the wheel as much as possible.
Right.
Clearly for a calendar type control, we have to do some reinvention, but
Okay.
yeah.
So this appearance option, how does that follow or not follow date string or date?
It mostly follows the same format as date format, so you can provide a list of strings, but there's a bit of extra flair to it, which you can see in the appearance documentation option on this page. For example, if you have, say, a control, so any granularity like month, year, etc., automatically is interpreted as a control. And you can do arrow goes to none to suppress a control if you just want to see the dynamic string. And then you can also choose the control by having it go arrow to, say, pop-up menu.
And how does that agree with our date format setup?
It agrees almost entirely with the date format setup, except for the addition of these rules that I've included.
Okay, well, can anybody else comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same element names and same ordering principle that we have in date format. Like Kevin said, I think the main difference here is just that because it is a control, there are some additional aspects of manipulating the appearance that controls typically have. So I think that's why there's the slight.
But essentially, we have these. If you wanted to have the word year in this, how would you do it? Is there a
Year,
verbatim?
there currently is not a verbatim. I have not implemented that.
So there probably should be. What is it in date format? How do you want to, in date format, how do I say, give me this date where the actual word year is in there? Do you understand the question?
I'm not aware how to do that.
Yeah, we don't have a literal verbatim for the expression in date string, because basically the string names are keys. It's the same elements that we use in.
Where are the names?
Date string has the full list of them because there are 400.
Why isn't it in date format?
We have some of it, but
we should have all of it. It
yeah,
shouldn't have to go indirect to another piece of documentation.
So I mean, this goes to other conversations we've had about, if we want to duplicate these kinds of things between multiple pages, how to keep them in sync.
I know. They need tagging. We've talked about that.
Yeah. So date string and date value have the full list there. Date format doesn't, but we can certainly move it over and try and work on the tagging system for it.
All right. So we need a mechanism so that you can actually have the word year in the date string, right?
So if it's not, I mean, typically when it's done there, you have some delimiter also. So if it's a string that's year space, it will appear literally as year, but you're right that there probably should be some way of specifying it without having to add white space or something.
That's a hack.
Yeah, it's definitely a hack. I mean, I think verbatim would certainly be one method for adding that in.
Verbatim is not Hodel, is it? I don't think it is.
No, I don't think.
No, it's not.
No.
Okay, so it'll be fine. I mean, so then we can document that, and you can say, you can use verbatim in any string you want, other than the strings that actually represent elements, named elements.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of using the symbol key to wrap around a key for an association.
Yep. Okay. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah. Various people are commenting, this is ugly graphic design. Yes, this is not yet graphically designed. Okay, there's a comment from Ethan here on our live stream. Is there a way to restrict or highlight the allowed dates to choose from? It's a good question.
Yes, there is. Again, you have to use the appearance option, but the right-hand side of any of the granularities, you can use appear function. And so you can make the control whatever you want, including restricting the range of dates. So in the appearance option here on the documentation, if you scroll down a bit, you'll see an example that uses appear function to literally restrict the dates.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm convinced about this because I mean, we already have this notion of restricted, right, which we use in the case of form functions. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't understand this. I'm sorry, I don't understand this. No, you can't put in any kind of random crud on the right-hand side here. You know, it's a pop-up menu. Okay, that's the appearance of the thing. Great, we can have that. But you can't just sort of throw in, I mean, how do you know what you're supposed to do with it? I mean, you just have a table. You say, if it's a pop-up menu, do this. If it's whatever, do that. But what if you have some styling of the pop-up menu that makes it a pure function? What do you do then? In other words, if year arrow, pure function, pop-up menu of blah, style arrow, blah, 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 does that then become a restriction or is that then an appearance thing? You get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, the appearance option only controls the appearance of the control, not the underlying date object that's being controlled.
I don't care. This thing here, look, you can't have the right-hand side both be a thing that selects what values are allowed and a thing that determines what kind of control comes up. Do you see what I'm saying? Am I being confused? Nick, do you understand this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not as familiar with the aspect of how appearance is used in other controls, but it does seem.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that you know, my first thought is to compare this to something like Locator, but you know, in Locator, there's no necessarily visual feedback about the kind of constraint that you're imposing, where in this case you probably want some sort of visual feedback.
What is the mechanism for constraints in Locator?
Well, it's mostly your dynamic function that you know,
I see.
you know, you do something like you know, say apply a round or sine and cosine to keep it on a circle or something like that. And you could certainly do that here, but it would just be confusing if it were like, well, the date is there, but I'm trying to click on it and it won't let me click on it. What you probably want to do is, if a particular date shouldn't be selected, you probably want to gray the date out in the calendar view, for example.
Right. But in particular, this notion of, okay, so one possibility is a date selection function that basically says, is this date a possible date?
Yeah.
Another one is, you know, pick Tuesdays and Thursdays. In other words, affirmatively picking things. Now, we have a mechanism, don't we, at least under development, for specifying groups of dates. Is that correct?
Well, a date interval could specify that. But I'm looking at this. Perhaps this is not so different. So the previous case says, say, calendar goes to pop-up menu. And this is also a pop-up menu. In both cases, it's acting as a function. It's just that in the previous case, we didn't need the hash. And here we do need the hash.
Well, but the pop-up menu, wait a minute. The issue is.
Right, so you were complaining that before, I mean, in the just a bit above, there is calendar goes to pop-up menu.
Yep.
Which seems like it's just saying pop-up menu, but perhaps pop-up menu is being used there as a function.
Oh, no, I agree. It's being used as a function. But the point is, what is it a function of? What's it doing? So pop-up menu there is a thing that says, put the pop-up menu in the position where you're selecting a year. It's not saying, make me an array of years and label them, well, I mean, okay, what is this control? This thing here. What is that? Because that's the place where you're going to be, have selection allowed. Okay, in a pop-up menu, there is, to my knowledge, no way of saying, here's a pop-up menu, but some of its entries are not allowed to be selected. Or is there a way to do that?
I mean, we might just remove those entries.
No, I understand that. I understand. One could remove them, or for clarity, one could gray them out. I mean, if there are no available dates in March when you can book your vacation.
It is in principle possible to have a grayed out pop-up menu that does nothing when you select it. I mean, it's a little bit of hackery behind the scenes, but it is possible.
I think for calendars, it makes more sense to have things grayed out than to have a missing month.
Yeah.
I think it's very confusing.
Well, and I think, the more I think about this, I mean, this makes sense if we have, a completely independent date restriction function or whatever you call it. Then the implications of that date restriction function can be automatically applied to all of our built-in DateSetter appearances. Now, if you build your, a completely custom view, of course, you're on your own. But if you use anything that kind of we are auto-populating, then we'll help you out by graying stuff down or whatever.
You shouldn't use DateSetter. It doesn't give you anything if it's completely custom view.
Well, I mean, you might you might do something like use an input field to enter something, and then we can't give you any signals in an input field about what month is
okay.
valid,
So what is the potential date selection function? Because I mean, but what you would have to do in that case is, as you render any particular view. So if I jump from March to April, for example, then you'd have to run through for every different date in April. You have to run through the date selection function and see, is it grayed out or not?
Which I think is reasonable. Yeah.
No, I don't think it's unreasonable.
Well,
now,
here there is, for example, a way of restricting per year. So I mean, we could use date select with a criterion, with an operator form, and that would be super general. It can be applied to any date. But the advantage here is that you can immediately say, I don't want years, or I only want years of 2021, without having to go through the 365 of them.
I'm sorry, what's the advantage? I'm sorry, I'm confused. This case here, so this is, you can only reach these things because they're the only ones that are in the control.
Right. What I'm saying is that imagine that you want to select, I don't know, the second halves of all year in that range.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be easy to say years I want from 1990 to 2000, and months I want for 7 to 12.
I don't see why that factoring is useful. I mean, look, I might want only leap year, only non-leap years.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so there are two ways to not be able to select a date. One, because the controls just let you get there from here, and two, because it's grayed out within the things which are being shown by the controls.
And I would suggest maybe those are separate things. I mean, there might be particularly for years, there might be a range specification that only show years from 2019 to 2029.
Well, that's what the restricted mechanism would suggest.
Yeah,
you could wrap restricted around the year potentially. I don't know if that's an abuse of that syntax. And similarly, you could wrap restricted around the month, although it's less likely to be useful.
Yeah, I don't know how potentially pathological the restricted syntax gets. I'm not familiar with it. I hope it's if it's not too pathological, I'll go along with it. But
no, it's very hacky. I mean, it's basically here are specific kinds of restrictions which are useful for particular kinds of data types.
Yeah, but in terms of date selection, and someone pointed this out in the comments that I mean, you know, you might want to do any kind of date selection. You might just have a list of 10 dates, and you want it to be, you know, only to be able to select from those 10 dates. And I think, you know, having a calendar where you could kind of navigate anywhere but only see those 10 dates light up is a perfectly reasonable thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's another case, unfortunately, which is, you know, I can imagine both blackout dates and whitelist dates. That is preferred, you know, somehow indicating preferred dates, right? These are the possible dates you can take your vacation to Null Island or something, and these are, you know, this is the I don't know, the next available, or the dates where there's a special discount available or something. Am I making sense? So in other words, that's a decoration, that is a styling, so to speak, of the calendar that goes beyond just the blackout thing. Does that make sense to people? It's just like, you know, we've got styling of, you know, data set and things like that, styling of a calendar display. And by the way, I would like to make the following comment. This display of a calendar in which you are selecting a particular day, you know, you should be able to get this out as a pure piece of output, just like you can, you know, for example, I could imagine a data set where you would want these kinds of displays. So my claim is that date format should have a mechanism to have a calendar-like display where a single date or a date interval is highlighted in something like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the case for date interval is potentially more complicated, but I think
Yeah, and to be
yeah.
and to be clear, this also was, you know, one of the questions that came up in the live stream. We're purposely avoiding date interval for this review because date interval brings in a lot more issues than just you know, picking a date or picking a time. It's on our list. Kevin has the beginnings of something, but it has some very clear shortcomings that make it not ready to review yet.
You mean selecting a range of dates, for example?
Yes, or
Okay,
you know, I mean, very usually selecting, something that's, you know, a beginning and an end. You know.
Okay, so I've got another point here. Just like we have timeline plot, shouldn't we have a calendar plot? Which is essentially like what I would see in my, you know, online calendar. It has times blocked off and things like this. So in other words, you can imagine
if we had a calendar format for date object, then it seems like calendar plot would be not crazy extension to that.
Right, but I mean, calendar plot means you've got this plot, this thing here, and I'm coloring the every day by what the temperature was on that day, that type of thing. It's a form of visual display that I can imagine being quite useful, and particularly in the case of times, when you have time intervals, you know, being able to, I would love to be able to take my, you know, for example, you know, like take my calendar for the last year and, you know, just color code how many meetings I had per day and display it as a calendar array, as an array of months. By the way, you absolutely need a version of this view that is, I mean, you know, I would have thought you need a version of this view, and arguably you should even have that as a sort of an interactive pull down, you know, week, month, day type thing, or, you know, month, week, day, year, month, week, day. Right. So in other words, just like, you know, any old average online calendar lets you get to a point where, you know, let's say I wanted to fill something in. I wanted to select the time, you know, 8:15 a.m. on the 19th. See what I'm saying? I would like to be able to drill down in this thing and get to that.
So more of the features along the lines of a true calendar app.
I would think so. Why not? I mean, because that's what, okay, look, there are two different things. There's, what will this be used for? This will be used, I mean, one could use it as a calendar. One could use it, I don't know, where, like, for instance, I would think on the web, it's like, you want to set up office hours at our summer school. Okay, go to this web API and select the hour you want. And it's already been, its back end has already blacked out the things that are no longer available. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And for example, in that case, you can imagine, and this is where this date selection function is a little bit trickier, because I can say I'm available 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. on these days, and specific time. It could be 9:27 p.m. to 9:32 p.m. or something. You don't know what. It's not going to be something where you can just go through and run through and say, is this a day accepted or rejected type thing. See what I'm saying? I don't think it's going to work to have, in other words, I think it's a little bit less trivial, and I don't immediately see how to do it. This concept of blackout selection, as opposed to affirmatively saying these are the allowed regions. Now, possibly it can be done with inequalities. That may be the right way to do it. Nick, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, the immediate example I thought of is, you're trying to book your vacation, like you said, and you can't book in the past. There may be some dates the hotel isn't available.
I know, but those are day-wise.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the thing where I'm available from 9:25 p.m. to 9:45 p.m.
Right.
I mean, maybe there are other applications where this makes more sense, but I've never seen a thing that that actually stops you from making such allocations in your calendar. It only kind of makes it clear that there's a potential conflict, but I've never seen anything that literally is like, no, you can't.
I think that's. I think that. I don't know. I seem to remember, like when I was booking my COVID vaccine thing. I'm pretty sure the app there was, it's like these times are available, the other ones are not.
Yeah, but you're not selecting
I'm not selecting.
Well, sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking about a range of times, which actually I shouldn't be thinking about.
Right, I'm talking about
that's a different problem.
Selected times.
I mean, I'm used to seeing like a calendar side by side with something that has a finer granularity. So like if you've selected a day, then you can see to the side, the calendar is still present, but you can then see.
That's possible. I mean, in the calendar, in the whatever Zimbra, whatever it is, calendar or iCal calendar that I normally use, it's like, you can select the overall granularity.
And keep in mind that this version of the control, I mean, this is, I just said we're not talking about interval selection. This version of the control literally just allows you to choose, one time only, not a time plus, that covers the next 15-minute block or something like that. That's,
I understand. But as Sandra is pointing out on our live stream that having a today button is important. Otherwise, you get lost in the future, lost in the past.
Certainly, yeah.
But again, those are things that should be settable in the appearance setting, but have some default.
Yeah.
See, I can imagine that a view of this in which instead of, the first view is just the year 2021, you've got the months here and you just click the month in an array, and then you go down to the month and you've drilled down to this. You might click the day except that that is a conflict for the click operation. For is it selection or is it drill down? See what I'm saying?
Mhm. So you're describing a view that is very click focused. You start at the highest level granularity and you just drill down as you go.
Well, I'm not sure that's the right thing because you've got to be able to have click to select.
Perhaps you can select and there is a button that says go inside or something.
Possibly, or a raft that comes up when that happens. You select and there's some kind of raft pop down thing that says drill down or something. The words drill down aren't the right words.
I'm not really sure there's a standardized thing that you would want to have in that sort of drill down. I mean, there's so many different ways one might want to go.
Well, it's showing you the time, the date, the times, right?
Well, not necessarily. It might, if it's a, if it's an alarm, then it might show you a clock widget, to set the time. If it's a set of flights, then it might give you 5 flights that happen to be at specific times.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Would you mind if I shared my screen briefly?
Go ahead.
Okay.
1 second, just 1 second.
Okay.
This isn't easy to arrange for a particular reason. What do you have? Can you send
I
me
have
something?
I have a notebook that you could evaluate. How do I send that to you?
Just send me email.
Okay. So feel free to continue the discussion. I'll get an email to you shortly.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Ethan is asking about the cloud. This absolutely has to work in the cloud.
Sure. Sure.
Now, Amber was asking, make it expandable to full calendar view. I'm not quite sure what.
Maybe they're referring to here the ability to do like a 12-month calendar.
Right. And they're also complaining
which I think having a range of things, it's, I mean, not just a 12-month calendar, but, a 2-month calendar is useful too. I very frequently see 2-month calendars when I'm doing travel planning, for example.
Right. She's commenting here, use a flatter design without gradients. Yeah. Controls should only appear on hover. Add a control on a circle to allow the user to change values. Not quite sure what. You mean these controls up here?
Or maybe in the date object type setting to have it look like a string until you hover over the particular granularity.
Yes. Yeah, well, I think that's reasonable. I mean, I think that I agree that this is pretty heavyweight. Does Christina want to comment on that? Nope. Okay, all right.
So go ahead and evaluate the entire notebook that I sent you. And the example is actually at the bottom of the notebook. It only is pink boxing right now because the definitions aren't there yet. The example in
it's still positively pink, like the panther.
Interesting. So you evaluate input 25 again, see what happens. Okay, so now that's a clickable thing. So this is a very click forward version of the interface. So you can cycle grids of dates, and as you click, it automatically goes down to the next granularity, but you always have the option to go backwards. And this is just a little.
How do I get back?
At this point, you can click the year in the upper left corner to go back to year, or you can click the upper center.
Why have I got 2 versions of this?
It's because I made changes to the calendar appearance in preparation for the live stream that kind of got burned in here. Okay. It would normally have just been the day calendar portion.
This part here.
Yes, you can either cancel the selection you've currently made or go back to a different granularity.
Yeah, this is quite nice. I mean, that seems quite nice to me.
In this case, the changes you make don't get applied to the underlying symbol until you've completed your selection. So all the way down
How
to
do
the
you,
date.
but what if I want to select the whole year, 2023?
This is still focused on day granularity.
That's
Like
not the
very-
right thing.
Well, I mean, you can make a control for year granularity, but that's not what this control is doing.
Right, but the question is, okay, so the issue is it the case? So like in a calendar app, it's always time blocks. Well, no, you can always have a whole day event, right, in a calendar. Like there's a notion of a whole day event. There's probably not a notion of a whole week event.
Well, but once again, keep in mind that we're not selecting intervals here. You know, the result is going to be a date object. It's
No,
not going to
I
be
realize
an
that.
interval.
I realize that. But I'm just saying that you're saying you have to preemptively decide this is going to be a year selection or a month selection, as
Yes.
opposed to deciding that at the moment. You know, there's no particularly good reason that I can see why this interface shouldn't allow you to decide what granularity level it is.
I mean, it doesn't seem to me like something that would be that useful. If anything, it seems to me like it would be more likely to generate user bugs, you know, in terms
Possibly.
of, you know, people writing code that didn't expect a date object that only had specified a year.
Yeah,
for
okay,
example.
fair enough. Well, I like this basic setup of this kind of drill down. I mean, although, I mean, look, a really common case is today is set, so to speak. Now you're going to set something. By the way, yes, I mean, so a pretty common thing is a future only calendar.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or a past only calendar.
Yeah, for birthdays or something.
Why would that be past only? Oh, you mean for dates of birth?
Yeah,
Yes,
or
you've
date of
already
birth,
been
yeah,
born.
sorry. Mhm.
Yes, you don't know when you will be born, but you have already been born, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. So is there a mechanism for specifying past only or future only?
Not currently.
I mean, I think that comes down to this date restriction mechanism that we've been talking about.
Well, but it's a little bit, I mean, probably we should have future past.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, it would make sense to have some maybe some string selectors, which do really common scenarios, and
Right.
then accept an arbitrary function for basically saying up or down for a given date.
Okay, but I think a pretty common case will be, here are the possible dates. These are the possible, trips to Null Island, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to give a list of those and say, select which one of these you want.
I agree. That seems reasonable.
There's also our clinic is closed on Thursdays type thing, right? Remove all Thursdays.
Yeah.
Which is more like an actual Boolean computation, so to speak. Presumably done on the fly. So in other words, whatever is being displayed, you ask of the elements that are being displayed. Now, clearly there's a, it could be the case that you're still allowed. The month of July has some blackout times, but something in July is still allowed. So you still leave July in the.
Well, and similarly, if you have a discrete list of dates, and those dates contain include July and September, but not August, then I think you should still display August. It would be confusing. It would be less.
I think you should gray it out, though. I think you should
display it fully grayed. Yeah.
Yes, because that way, otherwise you're going and opening the little doors and saying, is there anything behind this door? And that's really annoying.
Yeah.
Okay. So just again, this calendar plot concept, presumably that can work like timeline plot. So whatever formats there are here, and I could also imagine a calendar plot that is explorable. That is, there is a value for every date, whatever it is. There's a I can imagine that I want to sort of plot my busyness level as a function of time for the last 10 years, and I'm only going to see a particular month at a time. Do you get what I'm saying? But I can go and select other things.
Right.
That makes sense? So it's
Yeah,
like
I
a
think
tab
for-
view or something.
Jose, didn't Roger have some discussion about that at one point or another?
I think
Which
with
Roger?
Brett,
For what?
sorry. Yes, with Brett, we have discussed the possibility of having some visualization for calendars. And I think he has explored in the past about it.
Okay, but I'm saying I think that should merge with what we're doing here.
Mhm.
All right, what other things do we need to make
Well,
sure?
certainly it would be nice to have a unified graphic design, I think.
Definitely.
So that we're not reinventing the wheel.
Which does support the notion of controls only on hover. In other words, given that you know it's controllable, given that you know this is a calendar selector, there's no reason to have, front and center great big arrowy things, because you kind of know in modern times this is going to be selectable.
I'm somewhere in the middle. I agree. It doesn't need to be quote great big arrowy things, but there are cases where people get confused because there's nothing.
No, I know. I've been confused by that. Oh, is this selectable? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I think we could find like a balance somehow. Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to disappear in a few minutes. So what else should we?
Well, let's take a look at TimeSetter real quick. TimeSetter is actually simpler.
Yeah,
I know
simpler cousin.
I know, but it's simpler, but that's because you haven't dealt with intervals, which is the main thing of interest for TimeSetter. Dandy. I mean, I don't know what time zone it wants to display by default, all those kinds of things. Presumably it has the same time zone options as date object.
Yeah, the reason it's not displaying time zone is I didn't basically make a control for it. So I just took it out of the display for the time being.
Once again, you'll probably want to look under appearance.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, the contribution to TimeSetter that's different from DateSetter is this clock appearance, which is this analog clock.
You mean you can move the hands around or not?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All the hands. Yep.
Yeah, try it.
Cool. But you can't do that on like the Apple. Can you? Or is that one of these cases where I didn't know you could control something?
Yeah. Well, I
Really?
use Android. I use Android, but yes, it's this is exactly.
Yeah, you can wind it to your heart's content.
There are a great
couple
example of a case where I would have no idea that you could do
that.
Yeah,
there are a couple of details that are different from the way Kevin's implemented it, which we've been going back and forth in terms of what you see on cell phones. But yeah, this works on. This is very much a cell phone like thing.
I had no idea. All these years. Okay, fine. It's a comment from Ethan that he thinks timeline plot is old and needs love. I don't know. This is probably the wrong team to talk to about that. Be interesting to get specific comments about things that seem to be sort of long in the tooth.
The details about this interface right now is that as you mouse down and drag, you actually get the specific ticks. But once you let go, it snaps to what the analog clock should look like.
Yeah, move the minute hand to 11, and then try dragging the hour hand, and let go.
I don't know what
It's
the heck happened.
well, it's
It was
it's
went in-
because it's like 6:55, but of course 6:55 has the hour hand nearly pointing to 7.
Oh, gosh,
Which
that's
is
unbelievably confusing.
yeah.
Why
Well,
don't the detents? Why aren't the detents dynamic?
I mean, it's
That just seems
Uh,
crazy to me. That's just
It was a choice for
it's
sure.
wrong.
it may not be the right choice, which is why we're
I think the
talking about
detents
it.
should be dynamic.
Yeah.
I think whatever you set this to, that's what should determine where the detents go. Right, so that will be completely correct because it's at the top of the hour, and this would be, go to halfway. Just
So
because you can see that hour hand moving. I mean, it's obvious that then the thing that has to happen is,
so the way that Android deals with this, and I don't remember how iOS deals with it, maybe someone else knows here, but the way that Android deals with it is it only shows one hand at a time. So it shows you that say like 3:15. It will
right.
it will highlight the 3, and then the hand is the hour hand, or highlight the 15 and the hand is the minute hand.
Guys, I have to go. So
okay.
All right. This was a great start. I had not realized, of course, we're fairly early in the development cycle here, so we will get several more chances to go through this. But I think this was a good introduction here.
Okay.
And, looks pretty nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So thanks to folks on the live stream for their comments, and